We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Live from the Visual Radio TV studios in Quincy, Massachusetts, it's We Talk Live with Curt Dalton from Cannabis.net and Jimmy Young from ProCannabisMedia.com.
Yeah, I want to actually give you guys.
Here we thought we were going to bring food to us. Like right now, now we get T-shirts.
So you said
A few articles on Cannabis.net about margin compression. You know, I think when this 2 to 3 years out, we're going to see the price of this flower come down, down, down.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to Weed Talk. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm Curt Dalton from Cannabis.net.
Man, Curt, we got an amazing show tonight, and it's amazing that it actually came together in a short period of time as we were able to do it. You excited about this, Curt?
I think we have some great guests, some great content, and people are going to be very happy they're watching.
And we want to make sure, because we do have Dan McCarthy in the studio tonight, we want to make sure that we do get a few words in so that we too can enjoy this and people can hear everybody besides Dan. We do love that Dan McCarthy came here and actually saved this show and brought in a very special guest, and we're going to refer to him as David Y, and we'll explain in just a moment, because first I want to kind of give a highlight. We got some other stuff going on too, Curt.
Yep.
Tonight we've got a few interviews from Sensi Connect that was in Cambridge on Tuesday night, and we also have a little interview with a woman from New York City, Tribal Toke's Chief Marketing Officer, Kim B. Burns, and we'll be talking with her in between breaks. And, of course, later on, Hillary King will be joining us in studio as well. So that's what we got going. But first, let's talk about the people who support this venture. At least they do on this show on We Talk. And that means we're talking about legal seafoods. And remember, if it isn't fresh, it isn't legal. Some guests appearing on our show do get those gift certificates. And, check this out. This is Weejits. This jumped right ahead to Weejits. And we'll talk about Caroline's Cannabis. But check out what you're looking at. That's smoke, even though it looks like little bubbles. And it's the Weejit titration system. That's right. It starts when you flame up your bowl, which is on the left there. And the smoke goes right through these 4 chambers. It cools down the smoke from 1,300 degrees down to 80 degrees before it gets into your lungs. It takes out all the crap that you find in resin and on the inside of your bowls, and all that stuff gets filtered out. And the best part is it's washable. You can clean it right after every use. This is Weejits.com. And if you do decide to order something, weed, GETS.com. Use the promo code WeedTalk2020 and you'll get 10% off. So that's worth it. It's only like $40. It's a pretty cool deal. And I think, Curt, have you and I ever tried it together?
We had it in here a few weeks ago, and it was a really nice, very easily taken apart. You can actually clean it, and it has a very nice stem to it, if you would. It's not a hard thing to use. So
that's right. And it also fits pre-rolls, too, the filters on the pre-rolls. And we did see a flash of Caroline's Cannabis out of Uxbridge. We want to thank them, too. We'll be talking more about Caroline's
I want a prescription for a good
on. And let us go right now to our guests, and this will be fun because David Y is a chef.
Pro Cannabis Media.
Even though you're looking at Pro Cannabis Media's logo, but that's okay. David Y is a chef, and Dan McCarthy is a freelance writer, former editor of Sensi Magazine. And Dan, are we friends? Wait, are you? Can we put your microphone on? There you go. Now say it again.
Now? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now we answer the question. Are we friends, Dan?
I'd like to think so. Yeah.
I'd like to think so too, and I appreciate you for being you and helping me out with this program tonight. But let's talk about David Y.
You're not going to attempt it? I mean, you can attempt it. There's no...
Go ahead, Jimmy. Attempt it.
All right. I'm the professional in the room. I think the Z is silent, so I'm going to go Yusefzadeh.
Yusefzadeh.
It isn't silent.
Yusefzadeh.
Yusefzadeh.
I'm going to go with Yusefzadeh.
Ding, ding, ding.
Curt, you win. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about David Yusefzadeh. He's a chief and food designer based in Boston, Massachusetts, of all places. And he spent the majority of his career in fine dining restaurants and hotels around the world. A couple of celebrity chefs that you might have heard of, because I know a lot of people watch the Food Network out there. Jean-Georges, Von Gerrit
Von Richten.
Yeah, that too. Von Richten.
Gotta go with
Mario
Von
Batali.
Richten.
That's right. Mario Batali. I can do that one. And Richard, is it Ekabus?
Ekabis, yep.
Ekabis, just a few of the chefs that David has spent time with professionally. He is also now the CEO and founder of Cloud Creamery, a cannabis ice cream company based in Boston, because after all, New England eats more ice cream than any other place in the world. Don't know if you knew that. Just one of those stupid facts that I know. And, he also has eatsacrilegious.com events, which means he will cook for your event. Isn't that true, David?
That is very true. Yep.
Tell us how the heck you do this and how you got into the cannabis space, because that, too, is a pretty good story. And that's one of the things we like to do with Pro Cannabis Media is actually tell the stories of people in the cannabis space. So take it away, David.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Ultimately, we're able to do what we do because we have great friends. We have great support. Dan in particular, always helping, always, serving at events, helping bring things together, whether it's last minute, whether it's properly organized. But as you know, anything that happens in the restaurant industry, something is always bound to go wrong. So having great support is really how we pull it off. So I can't pretend to take credit for where we've landed, but I spent my career in restaurants since I was 14. My first job, I was baking croissants from scratch with a very angry Vietnamese lady in a coffee shop, and I still remember her yelling at me. And I really love food. My parents are both great cooks. Neither one of them cook professionally, but I was always excited by what they were making. I always, was ready to eat. Holidays were a blast. My mom would always bake all types of cookies and bars and different things, and I wanted to help her. I have two older brothers. They were both, big into sports, and I wanted to cook with my mom. So I used to watch the Traveling Chefs of Europe on PBS, Pre-Food Network, and record it and really just, copy down recipes. And these guys were doing opening live scallops, lots of cooking techniques that were extremely advanced for a 9-year-old, but I was intrigued, and my parents saw that, and I think they really just facilitated, a little more energy into that. At Christmas they'd buy me, my mom bought me how to make bubblegum kit one year, and my dad bought me a book on how to bake bread. So they saw it, and they were really helpful, and they really,
bubblegum, bread, and cotton candy. Those are the three food groups, aren't they? I mean, come on.
That's Christmas.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Christmas.
That's Christmas. Yeah, so it was a fun environment, and it was easy to learn in and great, and kind of went to culinary school out of high school. Got a great internship in Atlanta with an amazing chef named Ruben Garcia, who now runs the Masters tournament in Augusta, Georgia. And I think he really...
Whoa, hang a second. You just kind of floated through that a second here.
Yeah, the sports thing.
He dropped in the Masters golf tournament. Did you hear that? So
Jimmy's sports, spider sense just sent all the hairs up the back of his neck.
And by the way, I still have the recording of Tiger Woods, the final round on my DVR.
Oh,
and
man, I thought that was going somewhere else. I was like, come on. Now we got viral content.
Yeah, right.
So that time when he won, the cheering, I was cooking in tournament headquarters at the clubhouse, and we could hear the actual cheering from outside from the back patio. So it's not because of me, it's because of Ruben, but I think...
So wait a second, hang on a second.
Sure.
You have driven down, is it Marigold Lane? What's the lane? Is it
no, it's Magnolia.
Magnolia. I knew it was an M.
Yep. Many times. Got pictures right in the front.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, God, am I jealous of you. Holy, do you need somebody to carry your gear and stuff like that?
I'm more of a mini golfer. I'm not. Golf is. I enjoy.
No. I was talking about kitchen utensils.
No, I understand.
I was looking for a way in. Is kind of where I was going on that.
It's shocking how the waiting list for tickets. It's really. I didn't know. I didn't realize it was such a deep want.
My name's not on the waiting list. I'm just waiting for somebody to take care of me like America's guest.
I'll see what I could do. Yeah, I'll see what I can do.
Well, no, don't. I'm going to hold you to that, please, because that is on my bucket list. Dan McCarthy, amazing enough. We've kept you somewhat quiet over the first few minutes here. How did you get to know David? And tell me about what you've been doing, because I know you've actually been in New Hampshire on the political trail.
That's right. So David and I connected a couple years back while I was running, when I launched the Boston edition of Sensi Magazine, the national cannabis sort of city-based regional lifestyle publication. And while doing stories for Sensi and kind of being in each other's orbit. And he actually slowly came in and did some stuff with some of our events. As I moved on from Sensi and wound up working for a while with Cannapreneur Partners, which is that local cannabis investment holding company, an entrepreneurial sort of connector firm. David, actually, I tapped into him when I was sort of tasked with doing a bunch of events for the investor community and connecting different operators and investors. So in order to sort of try to move the needle and make some new waves in the way a lot of these perfectly acceptable, perfectly enjoyable, networking events that really kind of pop up all over the city within the cannabis community, especially as the cannabis community more and more is not only being normalized, but it's really starting to be accepted, and there's a lot more overlap in traditional business services and business type networking events. So as we began to form some of the early ones through 2019, and at the end of 2019, I grabbed David and his team and had them provide food for one of our investor events. I got into a video. Now, what happened from there is the more and more David and I started to work around each other, and he started tapping into different things I was writing or different projects I was getting into. There was just a lot of overlap, both in terms of sort of personal philosophies, business philosophies, and exactly where, a lot of people are in the cannabis industry right now, which is that this is an ascendant industry, okay? And everybody's grasping for their piece to varying degrees. Some people are carving out pieces within media and content. Some people are trying to be just a cultivator and dispensary outfit. Some are ancillary services. Some are trying to carve out new portions of traditional services like being a CPA or accountant services and say, hey, I'm the closest that's maybe come to solving traditional accounting services in the age of the dawn of banking services for the industry. So as we began to work more and more in each other's circle, and now that I'm more in just pure what I've been doing for 15 years, contract work and floating around, he works in orbit with me. So as I begin to do stuff and get more involved in the different side projects I've been doing for years, like the Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism, bingeonline.org, where we just had dispatched over 24 reporters for close to 40 different pieces of content and features of covering the entire campaign trail, pretty much like nobody else covers it, where a lot of people are concerned with the horse and pony show, the dog race elements of it, the sort of regurgitated aspects of the news. We covered that, and I worked in some of the actual drug policy and drug policy reform coverage that people in Massachusetts are looking for that are also involved in the cannabis space, and I've already gotten David plugged in with that network as we begin to expand out his Eat Sacrilegious high-end gourmet cannabis-infused dinner series.
Take a breath, will you please?
He's good at that.
He can carry it.
Yeah.
So
Curt, go ahead.
What does Cloud Creamery make specifically with cannabis, and where can someone get it? Start with that.
So we make our flagship products are ice cream and sorbets. We have established Cloud Kitchen, which will be our parent company, where you can have an array. But we're definitely starting with ice cream and sorbets. We are not available in any stores yet. We are waiting for the last part of we're waiting for our provisional license. We've been in the queue for about 9 months now, 8 months, 8.5 months. So we're hoping any day now, but as we all know, there's no definitive timeline for when that'll actually come through. But
in fact, it's a store. Some friends, Wicked Chronic, have been asked to cease and desist actually selling some of their CBD stuff.
Interesting.
In their items, and it's out of their store now.
Right.
But
why is it? Because
Town of Natick said, well, you know what? You got to comply. You can't. They're just. You know what it is? It's freaking town council people and city council people just saying, "Oh, we can do this because we are the city council. We got to preserve it."
CBD or just
No. Their oils are still there and all that stuff. Their T-shirts are still there. Everything. It's just infused in food.
Oh,
and right, David. And that's a no-no. Right now, that's a no-no. It's a stupid no-no. Okay, it really is.
It's really just it's managed poorly. It really comes down to poor management, in my opinion, from the top. And I think, and I don't want to put all the blame on the CCC because there's lots of things that they are being held to. But I moved here from Illinois, and the Chicago market already is just its trajectory is going to put us to shame. And frankly, it's embarrassing. There's a lot of people that need a lot of food, that need a lot of cannabis through food to help them digest. People like myself that are going through Crohn's disease, and we can get to that. But it's really beneficial to balance nausea, help people get their day started right. And if you can get good rest and have a good diet, you're really in the best place to battle anything that's coming your way. So it's amazing that flower and all these things were legal first. Frankly, it's baffling, but it's a business, and I think we all just have to remember that our generation is here to clean up a lot of things that have gone. That my generation is screwed up. It's okay. And before you. Yeah. It's not all on you. I appreciate that. It started, in the Industrial Food Revolution, but I really think that we are here to communicate the benefits and really, point out with our technology that there's so many federal research projects that showed positive results that were not funded by the federal government. And we're happy to do it. You mentioned the federal. Right now, the federal government is just non-operational. Okay, and later on in the show, we're going to be talking with Morgan Fox from the NCIA because. Well, I don't need to get into politics, but we all know how I feel about politics. And the fact that they still haven't passed the Safe Banking Act out of the Senate is just bizarre to me. And I had an incident personally for my company where a bank, and I'm going to name them, Santander, shut down my business account, and they took my personal account down too. Why? Because I took cannabis money from a member association that is not selling it out the door. They're just a member association. Anyway, I'm really mad, and now I have found a very friendly credit union in Rhode Island, Greenwood Credit Union, where I will be doing my banking. So there. Anyway, what did it take me? 15 minutes to do that? That's not bad. I was horrible. Anyway, what do they call that? I popped my cannabis financial cherry, I guess, because people have gone through this. I mean, Curt, you like that, Dan?
I do.
You like that?
Yeah.
Curt, you've gone through that.
Yeah, we've had merchant accounts shut down for us, just because of the name.
Right, just because
we don't sell anything with THC, and we were shut down. So,
And
welcome to the club.
And David, your experience with any banking issues or anything like that?
We are working with Gardner Federal Credit Union, and
we love Tina Sprague. We love that group. I wish they would have returned my calls. Tina, I would have worked better, but whatever.
They're busy, and they've been more than kind to us and extremely thoughtful. I think the management there, they are aware of what is coming, and I think they're making the right steps to get themselves in place. It's never, there's lots of work to be done on all fronts. However, I think their heart's in the right place, and they're working on it. So. That's good.
I think, look, it's great that the people in the credit unions are working on it and giving the break, if you will, open. Sure. And they have this policy and this questionnaire that I had to answer before my account was opened and all that.
Right.
And it's definitely put in a special category in the bank. I found that out this week when I tried to make a deposit at a affiliated federal credit union. But, it was like, oh, no, you got to tell us you're going there first before you go. And I'm like, okay, I'll figure it out. It's all a workaround. We're still part of a very early stage, huge industry, right, guys? And patience is built into you if you're in this industry. Don't you think?
It's a marathon, not a race.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, you've been in the queue for 8 months with not a lot of communication on, hey, you're 2 more weeks, you're ready to. You're just like, could be tomorrow, might be in 3 months.
Zero communication.
That's tough to do.
And we don't have any retail space. We're a manufacturer, so no one is coming into our storefront. So our security measures, everything is. I mean, in general, I think much more straightforward than what a dispensary would have to go through. But in addition to that, I've opened 6 restaurants. My business partner has opened 2. So between us, our food safety, our track record, this is what we do. We're just merging cannabis in as another ingredient. So we were hoping that would leverage some credibility in our, being tasked with providing something safe and nutritious, but it really doesn't seem to matter.
Infused into a food, are you worried about the FDA at a federal level, even if you got a state clearance?
I mean, there's a couple answers here. So the FDA, with all due respect, needs more inspectors, to say the least. They can't cover. There's restaurants that get passing grades that should not have passing grades, and I'll spare you on that. But I don't believe that they are given the tools to do what they need to do properly, in fairness. So I hesitate to put it all on them, but I don't know that, frankly, most people that are in cannabis policy seats really have any idea of what's actually going on, because none of them are on the ground talking to us. And so to your point, in a roundabout way, the communication, in my opinion, should be constant. We should be ping-ponging back and forth all these things to make it as best as it possibly can be for our patients.
So the NCIA, the National Cannabis Industry Association, they're actually having a show next week in Boston, their Northeast Cannabis Business, and we'll be talking with Morgan Fox about that. But I know that they've put out a multi-page policy paper to share with those who are governing, okay, to enlighten them and tell them about what is going on in the trenches, if you will, and how they might want to think about creating their policies. And so, and it's frustrating because it's falling on deaf ears because the FDA, they're clueless. It's sad. It just
and I think that's why that's what I meant earlier with our generation is more of the avenues we're taking to make changes. I think we have to really stop asking and really start making some demands. So,
absolutely,
it's a little too late for these things.
Can I tell you who I blame on this?
Sure.
It's Mitch McConnell, and the reason why is he was the one who got the farm bill through the Senate, okay, and signed his little paper with his hemp pen, not realizing that in hemp there is CBD, okay, and he didn't understand what CBD was. He thought it was CVS, I think.
You might have.
Right? That's a consumer value store, kind of the big chain. Sorry, I had to do it. And it's Pandora's box. Once that opened, everybody's like, hey, check this out. We got a non-intoxicating chemical in the cannabis sativa plant that we can actually infuse in different food items. Ooh, and it's not going to make you intoxicated. Ooh, and there's nothing negative about this. Ooh, so why are they dragging their feet? Because they want a piece of it.
Well, I think
they want a piece of it.
I mean, we approve lots of chemicals that are in food that are extremely harmful to all humans, especially the youth in every fast food restaurant. And I've spent, my education, my graduate degree is in U.S. food policy. So we've gone through lots of different context, even from what used to be food stamps and SNAP, what it's turned into SNAP, and kind of what people can buy with these things, and how they weren't able to buy vegetables and or diaper with them, but they were allowed to buy 2 liters of Coca-Cola. So there's a whole. It's not. There's you peek behind the curtain. It's ugly, but we vote with our dollar. So frankly, when you go buy cannabis at certain dispensaries, when you go buy certain products, you're advocating for it. And I think people really need to switch their mentality of who they're supporting.
Oh, goodness gracious. Isn't that the truth? And speaking of support, Dan, you were right in the trenches. I again, a few things. I still can't believe that I've lived to see the day that cannabis is a legal product in my home state. But the fact that it is a political issue in an election year, and we're seeing incredible movement in states like Kentucky today, I'm pretty sure, move forward with it. New Hampshire now, I believe you can pass the House where you can now grow it. Okay, so we're making a lot of progress. The green wave is continuing to evolve here, and it's part of the political scene. I'm sure when you were right in the middle of it up in New Hampshire, you got some feedback about how people, are you pro-cannabis, anti-cannabis? Are you pro-hemp, anti-hemp? You tell me.
Well, I mean, the campaign trail is the great equalizer, right? Because what's happening in particular in New Hampshire, because of the timing between Iowa and the subsequent primaries, New Hampshire, and people will continue to debate, and I hope so, the outweighed importance of the New Hampshire primary. But the reason why the New Hampshire primary really sets a new precedent in each cycle is that it gets people up close and personal with these candidates, right? Everybody famously remembers what happened in '92 when James Carville enacted the town hall that gave younger Bill Clinton the ability to spring off those stools and directly go address and do his Clinton thing right in the eyes of the voters, where George Bush Sr. is checking his watch and has creaky knees at that point. The ability to actually interact with the electorate is what draws people to the circus that rolls through town every 4 years. And while out there, I mean, just very naturally talking to people about what and how they feel about cannabis legal reform, but more specifically as it relates to their own lives in the Granite State. And you'd be surprised how many people aren't following. It's just sort of out in the ether. So when you're like, yes, just recently by voice vote, they passed it in the House legislature that therapeutic use home grow is going to be allowed. People have no idea. Yet on the flip side, that same person who is a voter registered in a upper middle class affluent suburb north of Boston in the southern part of the state that was going to predominantly go to Pete Buttigieg, he has his own plan, which some say could be revolutionary, some say is absolutely ridiculous. That it was called the Plan B plan of cannabis reform by this particular candidate, which was to properly use, in his own words, in his own ideas, Air Force One as a vehicle to fly into the home districts of any congressional lawmaker creating a roadblock for full wide-scale legalization, to basically educate them on what they don't know. Okay. Now, this is in contrast to now the eventual leader of the Democratic frontrunner, Bernie Sanders, who his whole plan was to, legalize on day one by presidential decree. Now, that's wonderful sentiment, has a whole other construct of legal issues around it.
Right.
But at least there is a clear and present plan laid out, where then you had the other sort of members of the field in different hemming and hawing, wrapping it up into larger scale criminal reform plans, which also comes back to Mayor Pete on the campaign trail. Anytime he was given a sort of specific question about plans for legalization, he would regurgitate some kind of platitude, and then usually in his case refer to his policy, which is this thing called the Douglas Plan, named after Frederick Douglass. And the ostensible plan is to basically elevate and empower all of Black America from all different spectrums of life, but wrapped into that is comprehensive crime and penal reform, and within that the disproportionate amount of people of color that have been arrested for low-level non-violent cannabis possession crimes, which puts them in the boondoggle of forever being within the penal system, which can now extend to the other billionaire trying to get into politics, Mike Bloomberg, who of course with his stop and frisk program, that was part and parcel of a wide-scale racial profiling law enforcement platform in New York City that now he's backtracking on, and he's the same mayoral entity and now presidential candidate that said medical marijuana was a hoax. Like the passage of medical marijuana itself, the concept of medical benefit to cannabis, was a hoax.
Do you see the red light?
I do. What is that?
This is a new thing. It's a 1 minute warning sign before we take.
Is that when the bombs fall? I've seen The Day After Tomorrow. Is this the alert?
This is the alert, and basically we don't want to go over a certain amount of time,
Gotcha.
so that the simulcast that we are providing to the Investor News Channel down in Florida won't get screwed up. That's
Gotcha.
pretty much what it comes down to.
Great.
And I give Mike Zotos, our technical person here, it's his studio, and to put in also more bells and whistles, and I bet you like the bells and whistles.
And lights, bells, whistle, lights.
Yeah.
Bells,
Nice and easy.
bells, whistles, and lights. And of course, this is We Talk. I'm Jimmy Young, your host from Pro Cannabis Media. Curt Dalton is here, and Dan and Dave are here as well. And we're going to have more of this show coming up in just a little while. And in the second half hour, we've got a very special phone guest with a gentleman who's going to tell us about a product that can detect what is hemp and what is cannabis sativa. Okay? That's coming up. Don't go away.
A philosophy of you can't pronounce it and it's not from nature, we're not putting it in our products. And then from there, we kind of decided, well, I've been a Pilates instructor for over 20 years. I love fitness, and I decided that we should really launch some wellness products as well. So Tribe Tokes grew to Tribe Brands, and we've been going strong in New York City ever since.
Do you support more regulation in your industry?
I do support more regulation in some ways, but I'm also very specific. We have to make our regulation affordable. And so that small businesses like myself, I'm a woman business, and my business partner, I work really hard, and we would want to keep doing this, but we're also scared that our government is going to make regulation out of our reach, and that's really effed up, and that's what concerns me. As far as health regulation, I don't believe in over-regulating, but I think it's really important to list all of the things that are there, to have lab testing, to have batch testing. It's important. There are a lot of CBD companies out there, and I won't name them, but they're getting sued for not actually even real CBD in there, synthetic marijuana and CBD products. It's disgusting, and I want to expose that. That's not okay. We work very hard, and we have a high-end product, and we're not able to cut our margins because we're not filling or lying. So I hope our government can see that small businesses is the culture. The traditional market was the market before there was legalization, before any of this happened. So anybody that's been in the business for more than 5 years understands that it's a cultural thing too. So I think we should honor some of that as well.
So now's the time to put on my headset again, right? All right, welcome back to We Talk, everybody. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, alongside...
.net.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. We're back.
Say that again.
Kurt from Cannabis.net. We're on.
There he goes. And one of the most popular websites in the world of cannabis is Cannabis.net. That was Kimby Burns. She's out of New York City. She hosts a podcast. She works for a CBD company. You saw Tribal Tokes. You can check that out for you. And we'll be having the entire interview on an upcoming edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young, the podcast that really started this whole pro cannabis media thing way back in March of 2018 at NECANN. And since we're talking about NECANN, the New England Cannabis Convention, I'm going to tease the guests for next month because Mark Shepard and Jeff Lawrence, the two founders of that, the two principals, and have agreed to come in about a week before their big show, which is the biggest show at the Heinz. And Kurt, I know you've got some experience going to some conventions. NECANN is still the giant.
It is for Massachusetts. I think they were first boots on the ground maybe 6-7 years ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's grown to, boy, if you've been to the Heinz in Boston, you know it's now both rooms, the hallways, and honestly, when other shows come in, we have an events page at Cannabis.net, so I know when the Boston shows and other brands come in, NECANN, for New England, at least, is the industry standard here.
There you go. All right, let's bring back in Dan and David here. And in just a few minutes, we'll be talking to Greg Giuntini, who has this really cool product, guys. I don't know. Have you ever heard of this thing? It's brand new to the market. It's taking off. Obviously, law enforcement loves it. But it's a product. It's a doohickey, okay, that is also an app on your phone that just in case you got a big truck full of hemp and you're stopped by law enforcement, you can actually show them, test it right on the spot. You see, there's no THC in this green plant that looks like cannabis sativa, and it is. I call hemp impotent weed. Is that accurate? What do you think, guys? Is that because I don't like to use the M word?
Is that what it does for you, Dan?
I don't like to use the word marijuana. I just don't. I mean, it's a horrible word that means nasty things, and I just don't want.
I think millions of men have called it that about midnight and across this country on certain nights. So,
although it really depends on body type, like everything within cannabis. I mean, right. I've talked to several middle-aged men that came to cannabis late in life, and said this is the special Spanish fly root they were looking for.
The little blue pill of the green plant.
I mean, you know what I mean. If it's natural, then it works.
Right.
Hey, if it works, you don't knock it, right? All right, David. What do we got? Dan, we got Greg on the line? Not yet.
You
1 minute.
me?
We will in 1 minute. No. I'm going to David. I'm going back to David because we've got about a minute.
Sure.
If I wanted to hire you for a private event, how would I go about doing that?
Yeah, usually, either our website or Instagram is kind of the best way to get started. We typically, we want to really evaluate what event you're looking to do. For us, high quality food is number one. Cannabis is, merging into that. So if you're asking us to come, make some cheeseburgers and grill some hot dogs for you, we might not be the right group. But if you'd like something that's thoughtful, curated, really built around an experience, we are absolutely the people for that. So Instagram is a great vehicle. It's really something where lots of people we from all different walks, events we've done in other states can kind of reach us and connect. Typically, it's a quick email, usually a quick phone call, and take it from there. But
is Cloud Creamery the Instagram account? Just tell people.
Cloud Creamery is Instagram.
Okay,
account,
Cloud
yes,
Creamery,
mm-hmm.
Instagram.
Okay.
Quick email.
I feel like we should slide this around.
How many courses are we getting?
Oh,
how many when you
we
do
have
a
some stuff here.
We do. Show everyone what it is. What do we have
no
here?
No THC product. Let's make sure we understand that. We're not drinking on the air either here.
Okay.
It's a little loose. I've been out all day running errands, but it's in a freezer bag with some packs. So if
it's soft ice
reach
cream.
in the center, you'll get a scoop. But it's.
So if someone books you for a cannabis-based dinner,
right.
we talking every course with cannabis? Explain to people
How
what do
do
they expect at their house?
Sure. We typically, and part of the initial conversation is really gauging your cannabis use or your,
and you talk to
guests.
everybody at the party, right?
Correct.
Individually, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, we talk to everyone at the party. We talk to everyone individually. It's a salted caramel.
Salted caramel. Is this ice cream or sorbet?
It is ice cream.
So there's cream in this.
Yep.
Now there's a finger in it.
There are
well,
spoons.
That just ruined it for everybody.
I was like, you guys can have it, guys.
There we go. So it is a little loose just because it hasn't been in the freezer as long. So don't worry about that. But you can see the consistency looks very ice creamy. And I may be a regular at Richardson, so we'll see how this compares. So.
All right, so while he's tasting the ice cream, I believe we have our interview. It's good, isn't it?
Oh, that's good. It's got a little salty to it, too.
Well,
It's
salty.
delicious.
It's
salty caramel.
Salt caramel. That's the flavor, Dan.
All right.
Come on. Kurt, what's
But
the deal?
wait. This is the ice cream. Tell me if I want you to come to my house and use cannabis in a meal. We talking appetizers with cannabis and
Everything
everything?
start to finish. Yeah, usually we do a mocktail, so we don't serve any alcohol. So usually there's a mocktail infused with terpenes, just to kind of get you going.
Good that you would mention the fact you don't serve alcohol because we know that's an 8 times is situation, and we don't need to get into that. However, we do need to get into how do you tell the difference between hemp and potent cannabis? So we have impotent cannabis, which is hemp, or potent cannabis. And I believe we have Greg Giuntini, the Director of Market Development at DetectaChem. And Greg, are you there?
I'm there. Hey, good job with the last name. It's about 1 in 100 that nails that.
Thank you very much.
That kind of night, believe me.
Yeah, but I'm afraid of the other guy in the studio here, David, but that's another story. Greg, tell us a little bit about DetectaChem. How cool is this product, and how is it taking over as far as what law enforcement is always asked for when they stop a big old trailer truck that's filled with hemp and they want to arrest the driver because he's got weed. He's got potent cannabis in his truck. No, he has hemp in his truck. So let Greg stop. You could just eat a little bit and let Greg talk. Go ahead, Greg.
There's a lot of good talk about ice cream and such. So I like that. It's a good primer. But yeah, the company is DetectaChem. We've been around since 2005. We're based in Houston, Texas, and our whole game's been on the law enforcement side and the military side, doing trace explosive detection and trace drug detection, and we're used by every federal agency in the U.S. and hundreds of state and local law enforcement, bomb squad, military groups. But yeah, the CBD THC thing for years. We had a THC kit, is a very well known chemistry, a Duquesne Levine chemistry that has been scientifically able to determine THC, but as you guys know, every law enforcement guy in the country was saying, well, that's our problem. We've got a truckload of what looks like marijuana, and they're telling us it's hemp, or vice versa, or from an agricultural standpoint, what we heard about a lot is DEA and such, that they'd be legally growing hemp, but then illicitly they'd have a quarter acre in the back of one of their many acres where they're growing marijuana and selling it illicitly, or making hash oil or something out of it, which is big bucks. And there's no way to field test it. There's no way to field test and differentiate the two. So our company, we got enough requests where a lot of the other chemistries that we do are based off NIJ standards that have existed since the 70s. So we had to create a completely custom chemistry to be able to do this, because they're both, as you guys know, they're close chemically. The indols are close together. So a lot of the previous tests would it doesn't matter if it was CBD or THC, it would just come up as a cannabinoid. So we basically had to just take thousands of samples from different states, different types of CBDs, different concentrations on THC side as well, and create a chemistry that could really differentiate the two, and it came out really well. So when you use this $4 field test and you swab anything that has CBD content or THC content, even hybrid material, it can not only differentiate what's CBD and what's THC, but it can show you a hybrid of the two. And arguably most important from a law enforcement perspective was it can also differentiate if it's above the 0.3% legal limit for THC, because that was another huge thing from a grow perspective, making sure it's harvested before it converts over above the limit, and then also for trafficking and with customs and such. So it's been a huge product. We launched this in October last year at the Chiefs of Police conference in Chicago, and we sold thousands of kits the first week, and it's been just escalating from there.
Well, they certainly have the budget for it, and I'm glad that they're actually finding this product, because it was one of the more frustrating things that happened after my pal Mitch there signed the farm bill with his hemp pen, not realizing that he was opening up a Pandora's box. And I believe it was even within 2 weeks, a huge trailer truck, I want to say that it was going to Idaho maybe, and it was filled with hemp. And then the guy, they got it absconded from them because they said, nope, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So I'm
Did you hear
glad.
about that big thing with NYPD? They had 128 pounds of, they thought it was marijuana, but it was hemp, and it was a whole mess. And they use our stuff too, but I guess they didn't use it that day.
I was just going to say, it might not be the one you want to put on the billboard.
Yeah.
That's right. They already screwed that up.
Story on that. That's pretty funny.
That's a perfect example. I mean, that's a perfect example of why the kid's needed.
Greg, this is Dan McCarthy. Nice to meet you. I had a quick question. So, I'm always interested in the advancement of these kinds of technologies, and in particularly then get interested, especially, sort of the journalist in me, thinking about the ways in which you're working, across state lines and across agencies, particularly within law enforcement. So just out of curiosity, when the field kit test, it's called Mobile Detect, is that right?
That's the app. That's the free app. And then there's separate drug test pouches that the app analyzes the color. So
Got it.
Two things together, yeah.
Okay, so in the case of the app, right? I'm sort of a hound and very obsessed with security and data security. So, I read something sort of in advance of this, and while you guys the product can look at the THC content that registers above 0.3%, but after it does that, it says it's something like it generates and sends out probable cause reports, photos, GPS mapping, that sort of thing. Have you guys on your side, has there been any documented cases of false positives of something where something got tagged as THC and then it went through and actually in fact it wasn't, and how did that sort of troubleshooting take place after that?
Mm-hmm. So I can tell you we have not heard of, I can't say it's never happened, but we have not been, and we're usually told, we have not heard of a time where there's been a false positive or false negative on CBD and THC, and I think the product's great, of course, but it's been out since October, so maybe that will come up. But when we did, since, like I mentioned, we had to make a custom chemistry here, we, of course, try to break it because we need the stuff to be as accurate as possible. So we tried to run everything we possibly could that might hit on a false positive. So I haven't seen it yet, and hopefully we won't. But the touching back on the probable cause reports, you don't have to use the app. The kits can work like the old-fashioned field test kits where you just look at the color and you make the determination. But the app is a free app basically to generate those PC reports where it takes a picture of the reaction, it GPS maps it, time, date stamp, officer ID, custom note fields, and then you hit one button in the app and it generates a PDF report instantly that you can text or email directly from your phone. So a lot of agencies will put together an SOP where they set up an evidence alias, evidence at xypd.com, and as soon as they get any drug result, they can send it out immediately and put it in a repository. And it's a stronger piece of PC. The attorney's not saying, well, have you had your eyesight checked, and where were you, and did you keep the kit? And if they can punch a hole in something, they will. So we basically reverse engineered this from what we knew a defense attorney would try to poke holes in. So that's been hugely successful, especially for the app being free.
I was going to say, Greg, this is Curt from Cannabis.net. You walked right into my next question and saying, since October, it's been out. Has it been challenged in court? Has someone either overturned it or has a department used it for a conviction? And a judge has said, yes, this is the gold standard, or this is true.
I can tell you that the chemistry used has been validated by two very large federal agencies that I won't name, but you could probably guess. And it has not been upturned, and it has not been challenged.
Well, that's a good thing.
As far as I know of.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as I know of.
And now, I'm gonna. One of the first things when I first heard about this product, law enforcement is really looking to do their jobs, and they need tools to do their jobs. And this is obviously handing them one that can help them do their jobs. But the first thing I thought of was this is a test of the plant. It's not of a person who might be under the influence of. Correct.
Correct. And I was actually just in Colorado, Department of Agriculture 2 weeks ago, and they were saying, "Can you guys figure out a breathalyzer for for cannabis, and everyone wants that. But you're correct; it does not do that.
Thank goodness. I'm sorry. It's just how I feel.
As long as it's not that breathalyzer that went around the internet over the last month or so that has the single most ridiculous image you've ever seen of the guy that has this huge rhinoceros horn of, have you guys seen this thing where you hook it up to your nose and apparently it's a piece of tech that allows you to like register the actual THC in the air. This was actually on, I think it was Business Insider or something. And anyway, whatever the tech may or may not be and how it may or may not work, it just begs to be lampooned. So whatever tech you do develop, make sure you keep the optics in mind.
Greg, just curious, is your company the company when you go through the TSA line and they pick you out and they swab your bag with a little alcohol? Are you the DetectaChem guys up there? You're that guy? You're the guy that makes us do that?
Yes, I'm literally there in line.
Yeah. All right, good. You're that guy that's checking my bag for, I guess, explosives residues.
I'm the guy that needs the secondary and third pat down for you. Yes.
And you're not looking for any cannabis. You're looking for explosives at that point. So.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But yeah, it's a good extension of our product line because we've had our fentanyl, coke, meth, synthetic kits out for a long time. So this was the first new kit we've put out since our fentanyl kit. So
I bet with federal legalization and crossing a state line, you're in a very nice position right now. So good for you.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's funny. We even have police departments that, even though CBD stuff is legal, they just don't want their cops to be using CBD products. So they'll test their own guys on CBD material. So there's a lot of interesting markets for it. And it's the first product we've put out that has had a big consumer purchase, because we don't have any restrictions on who we let buy our stuff. And then obviously all the other kits have been law enforcement and such, or first responders. But, every day it's, XYZ, Hayes Incorporated and all these types of things. So interesting.
Well, before you go, I believe we have some video, Mike, that takes us through the process and actually sees the process. And I wonder if you can, I don't know if you're monitoring this on the internet, but walk us through a little bit about how this stuff works. It's talking about hemp and CBD products, and you're able to actually fill the need of what the law enforcement folks do.
Yeah, so I know the video you're referring to. Yeah, so it's easy. So the kits are little field test kits, and they have a removable swab inside the kit. So you would remove the swab from inside the kit. There's a little application end. All you have to do is, this is a residue test. This isn't even a bulk material test. So you just have to, in that video, rub it onto some of the bud. One of the pieces of bud is hemp. The other bud is marijuana. And then you insert the swab back into the kit. You manually crack the 2 ampules on the side that have these custom chemistry reagents. Their chemical reagents flow down to the bottom. They make contact with the swab. They saturate it, and they will turn a color. It'll turn either a reddish for CBD, or it'll turn blue for THC. So you can be done there manually, but then if you use the app, you'll notice there's a QR code on every single pouch. All the app does is it looks at the QR code and it looks at the color reaction at the same time with your camera, phone or tablet. And so all it's really doing is registering the pouch with a specific ID. Everyone has a specific ID, and then it looks at the color reaction, and if the hues fall within a certain scale, it makes the determination. And on the THC side, depending on the concentration, the darker the blue, there's a threshold where it can tell if it's above that 0.3%. So it just, our technology, we call it automated color metrics, and that's what it is. It automates it for you, and it takes an algorithm based against DEA standards. We hold a DEA license, so it makes a very highly validated legal determination of the color.
Fair enough. Hey, Greg Giuntini, Director of Market Development of DetectaChem, I really appreciate you calling in tonight. I understand you are a New Englander. You're in New Hampshire.
New Hampshire, yes, sir. Been a busy week.
Yeah, I've heard. I think something's been going on up there. Anyway, really appreciate you taking the time. That video was awesome, and so was your interview. So again, thank you again, and we'll look for this in our law enforcement logs, I guess.
I hope I never see your product up close,
That's
but
right.
Congratulations.
I don't know how to take that, but
right,
yeah, thank you.
It looks like it works, so no thanks.
It's a working product. Thanks so much. I appreciate it, Greg. All right.
Thanks, Greg.
So that, guys, I mean, now I got to ask you, again, what's your reaction when you see something like that? To me, it's serving a purpose, yes?
Dan.
I mean, it's serving a purpose, yeah, but I mean, again, this is, as you mentioned earlier in the show, we're at the dawn of an industry, and there are a lot of, what was interesting from what one of the things I heard was that he'd already actually, had a technology based on swapping for fentanyl and some of these other compounds. And, it sounds like they've worked out something for both THC and CBD. I'd like to see field test data. I'd like to see it in the hands of people that understand the plant at the molecular level. I'd like to see if it understands the difference between root cannabinoids and not. I'd also just like to see the ability for which something like that is a cutting-edge technology that is coming from outside the cannabis world, trying to understand and then have applicability to the cannabis world. Right. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm saying I'd like to see what that data looks like and what that legitimate field test looks like over a very wide berth, because I think there is... I just think any new tech coming into the industry right now, especially anything that is basically saying this thing is going to give conclusive results for X, so that the specific intent is something regarding law enforcement, counter-enforcement, whatever the case may be, I always walk very carefully into that, and I know a lot of people in the legacy industry do as well. It's one thing if this is something coming from the cannabis industry that's been working on these different tests so they can understand genetics better, or they could better splice something within the hemp plant for crop creation. I just think any tech like that, I want to see a lot of field test about it.
Would you ever have a use for that in your world?
I would have a use for it specifically because I stopped taking all synthetic medications. So for me, cannabis use is not just reactionary. I don't wait for a flare-up from Crohn's disease and then treat it. I use it preventatively. So I think it would be useful to measure the same way you measure your blood sugar, different diabetes tests. If you can measure your, more or less think of loading cannabis, right? Over a 3-day period, you're taking XXX milligrams, so it's in your blood constantly, keeping, certain inflammation from growing in intestines and in your stomach. I think it'd be really helpful to wake up every day and take a breath and acknowledge, be able to understand what's currently in your body from whatever, if you went to the gym or you went for a run and you could tell, you sweat it out what's in your body. I think it'd be really helpful to know, just to keep the level that you want consistently.
And kind of like Dan said, and the reason I asked him that question is, the Leafly article that David Downs did about the lab shopping and how a supplier can go to different labs and get readings all different, and he chooses the highest THC. And the thing I thought of was so all these labs with these scientists aren't getting it right, and they have the thing right there. They can work on it for 3 straight days, and and he solved it. He can tell you 0.3 above or below, and it just seems like, well, wait a minute, why can this group of scientists that Leafly showed, hey, take a sample to 3 different labs, you'll get a different reading, but his, which I'm not saying his product doesn't work in a 50,000-foot level to say, okay, but all of a sudden he's dead on at 0.3 above or below. And I just wonder, that's why I asked him, has this held up? Has anyone said, there is no history to this test, sir? Right. You're throwing it out. So,
yeah. I mean, and this isn't to disparage whatever he's doing either. I'm very cautious at the early days of the pre-days of federal legalization. Right, we're not even quite at the early days of that.
Yep.
I'm just, because of so much activity within the industry, so much settling of the tectonic plates of the industry as it continues to kind of get lock and step. There are missteps. For every 2 steps forward, the Safe Banking Act, and then the MORE Act, which rolled in the Safe Banking Act, and then all of the elements of criminal record expungement and all of the other aspects of social justice restoration. While that was a big moment forward, and it did have the kind of support it needed, as of yesterday, I read a story that top congressional GOP lawmakers thanked the Banking Services Committee for not pushing the MORE Act through or making a priority, especially during the impeachment trial, because that would have created new avenues up. The point being is this: there is so much activity happening that, almost taking the Buddhist approach of, if somebody says they figured it out, chances are that's a very pejorative way of looking at it from one silo. Because they're just there's many different people saying to different degrees they've figured out one of the other major problems in the industry. Let's say it's from the tax side, right? If somebody says they've stamped it, I have 100% locked into science. I know how to sort 280E out. Maybe they do. But if they've not done it in such a way that it is such a blanket statement that something that needs that 50,000-foot approach, like you said, like the FDA, can't stamp it on it, that next stage can't quite get there. Look at the Department of Veteran Services and the VA, right? They can't, no matter how much anecdotal evidence, double-blind, placebo, peer-reviewed academic journals of actual patient experiences over the last 30 to 40 years, let alone what's happening right here in Massachusetts with C3RN launching their veteran study in association with Alternative Treatment for Veterans, where they profiled just under 600 veterans nationally that actually created qualitative and quantitative data on how veterans are using cannabis, CBD and THC, but specifically cannabis as medicine, what it's doing to reduction of their VA-prescribed medicines, how that's affecting them in terms of out-of-pocket expenditures, and what that means for the social contract that originally got those veterans to go to war, that they said, yes, I understand that you, the military, when I get out, if I'm hurt, you will help me in the best way possible. You will cause the least amount of harm to my body. And after some veterans, you know Stephen Mandili and some of these other ones, after 10 years of VA-prescribed opioids and fentanyl patches for his heart with a fistful of oxy and all these other stories he's told 100 times, it took him 5 months of a cannabis regimen under a patient care advisor to actually get him to get off pharmacology. So what that actually means is that with all of these things shifting, until there is actually an industrial and an effective lodestar for other people to follow, anybody that has something that is already being jumped on by law enforcement and from federal service as something that, okay, yeah, we can definitely rely on that, where it's such an early part of the game, it's just one of those things, like, sounds great, I'd need to see a lot of field tests on this. I'd need to see a lot of running through the ringer.
That's what they're going to be doing now, because they have the opportunity to do it. At least now they have a little plaything they do it, and it seems to be working. David, before we go, can you talk a little bit about how you discovered how cannabis can help your Crohn's disease?
Sure. I moved to Boston for grad school. I ended up graduating early. I went in for an infusion. I would go in every 8 weeks and take 400 milligrams of a drug called Remicade, the original chemotherapy drug. And I went in, it was like mid-August, and they told me my insurance had been dropped.
Okay.
I said okay. There was no notification, no email, no call, no nothing. There's nothing available. So went through 2 days of extremely frustrating phone calls, and eventually I called and said, how much is it out of pocket? I'm getting ready to go to Asia for a few weeks. I don't want any issues while I'm there. What do I have to do to get it? They said it's $1,800. I said great. I'll put it on a credit card. I'll figure it out later. It's not what I want to do, but at this point I don't have enough time, and I'm traveling out of the country to sort it out. My personal health is worth $1,800, so I'll sort it out. I show up the next day for my infusion. It was $18,000.
No.
Oh, they missed it by 1-0.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I'll spare what I said, but
I know what you said. We all know what you said, and I don't blame you at all.
it was tough, but it ended up forcing me to really go full time on cannabis and really find what worked, and found it actually fairly quickly.
And because you're a chef, you can actually infuse it in your daily intake of food. Could you not?
Right, which is kind of the whole goal of our business, is to really merge it into people's lives so it's not so medicinal.
Yeah, well, how about that? Well, you've been great. I look forward to actually sitting at a dinner table with you at some point.
We'll make that
Cloud
happen soon.
Creamery on Instagram if you'd like
Thank
David
you.
to come to your house and make you some infusions.
Thank you.
And good luck. I know you're heading out to hang out with some pretty impressive people out in California, the other planet, the other planet that is California. And Dan McCarthy, can you stick around for a few minutes more, or do you have to run?
Do you want me here, Jimmy?
I would like to hear from
You guys are friends.
I'd like you to hang out for a few more minutes. Hillary King's on the other side. I want to bring her in too.
I got you.
All right, cool. Fair enough. Well, now we're going to take another break, and we'll be back with more of We Talk after this.
We are Pro Cannabis Media. Why? Because we are a media company that is pro cannabis.
Cannabis, because those stories are not being told.
We are live streaming from events.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of the live stream from the New England Cannabis Convention. Hey, unbelievable. Here we are again in the Performer TV studios. Hi, everybody. Welcome to We Talk Live. I'm Jimmy Young.
And I'm Curt Dalton from Cannabis.net.
We are blogging on all topics. We are partners with Leafly, Weed Maps, Greenflower, MJ Headline News, Sensi Magazine, and The Weed Tube. We are Weekly News Dabs with Jimmy Young.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of News Dabs. I'm Jimmy Young reporting for the Pro Cannabis Media Group and ProCannabisMedia.com.
From New Orleans, Liz Dameron, Pro Cannabis Media Network.
We are interviewing cannabis experts on the podcast In the Weeds with Jimmy Young.
You were one of the co-authors of Question 4, which paved the way. First of all, how did you get picked for that honor, if you will?
We write laws and regulations. We advocate for them, and we get licenses and keep them compliant.
But I do believe that Bruce is on the phone with us, so Curt, you can take it away as I go into my Rasta mode here.
Bruce, are you there? Can you hear us?
I can hear you guys. I'm just being quiet because I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's a rowdy show tonight, I got to tell you. So I have to lead off right now. You left Canopy Growth, as you said. No, I was fired. The entire cannabis stock market crashed. Did you cause that?
Well, I didn't fire myself, so I don't think so.
We are a digital media company for the cannabis industry, telling their stories in their words.
There's nothing like having patients come back and say, I feel better.
I am confident that Congress is, at the very least in this current Congress, by next year, going to make it legal make it clearly legal for banks to take marijuana accounts, which is a big step forward.
I never thought I'd see the Red Sox win a World Series, let alone 3. Yeah. I never thought I'd see the Patriots win a Super Bowl, let alone 5. This is taped. Okay. It's a whole new world of weed out there.
We are ProCannabisMedia.com. Subscribe today.
The last one, put them on.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.